Hello. Yeah, I realized after my last video where there was so much here that I didn't say one of the pieces that was wanted to be spoken. So I want to just add that to my last video. And that has to do with the much dreaded spiritual bypass that we as spiritual seekers or light workers, we have certainly learned that, you cannot bypass anything or leave anything behind if you want to live in an S spirit. And that makes totally sense, doesn't it? Because it's a very different frequency. It's a dense frequency, and dense frequency only thrives in density, whereas our true essence frequency is so much higher and lighter that you cannot bring what is not processed, released, healed, integrated, call it what you will. You cannot bring it in. So it is important to deal with that stuff, in order to automatically raise into the higher frequency of your true nature. It's not like we have to do something, right, to become who we already are. It's all about softening the edges that we have identified with and therefore has kept us in an experience that is different from who we are, denser, tighter, more limited, unloving, separate, isolated. You know what it is. That you cannot bring it into heaven, but you can also not leave it behind, because that's when the strings, the heavier, denser energies will keep pulling you down, and you will not be able to stay in a higher frequency. That makes sense, doesn't it? Okay, so we talked about that last video, how at some point you can let it go. And that is only because you have unhooked enough through the work you've done, these parts that were separate, not integrated, not loved. Now they are being loved back into the ocean of love itself. They are being integrated from, having been kept outside. They're coming into coherence with our true nature, which is love, which is peace. It's being integrated because you are bringing your true nature to it. And then it automatically melts back into itself, and there's nothing we need to do. It's like that frozen wave or ice cube that I have talked about before, right? The ice cube doesn't need to change, or the frozen wave doesn't need to take on another shape. It just needs to soften back into itself, the ocean that's just all around it. It's just that we were holding on, right? So when this softens, it happens automatically. Now, when we soften it enough, or I talked about the other day, if we bring enough love to it, and many times we don't know which parts are still contracted and frozen. So that's why the deeper work here is very necessary. But then there can be kind of a leap when you've seen enough, when you've brought enough love to it, that you can just let it flood or everything, and the whole structure can be let go of. Okay, so that's why it's important to do this work, not as a bypass, but as a form of softening and integrating, bringing coherence to it, yeah, simply bringing it back into wholeness. And then there's nothing to bypass. But as long as there's still a grip on something, it is simply because we have not brought enough love, softness, warmth, presence to it. So it's still holding on, right? So that's why we don't want to bypass any of these little grips. We want to help them let go. So now I want to shift over here, which is really what I wanted to talk about. That is that the spiritual bypass. Okay, so we have called it spiritual bypass, right? We go to spirit and we bypass all of this, and it doesn't work really well. But another way of looking at the spiritual bypass is that we've been bypassing spirit itself. Wow. And that's what I saw when I was doing the last video, that there is a place where we have to let go of that whole processing thing when the timing is right. Because in reality, all along, because we've been identified with the matrix, we have been bypassing spirit. We've all done it. And we tried to bypass that so we could be with spirit. And, I bow to that urge and that longing. I certainly can relate to that. But I have never really been a bypasser because, I was trained as a Hakomi therapist, and there's not much bypassing you can do there, You can try, but when you're with a Hakomi practitioner or therapist, it's like it's so in the field that it can be seen, and then it can be incorporated and brought back in. So that's what I wanted to add this, like we keep bypassing our true nature, our spirit, our essence, our soul. We keep bypassing it because we keep getting lost in the matrix. And like I talked about recently, is that we can get lost in therapy and processing. And maybe at some point we are ready to let go. And that's when we can stop bypassing our spirit. Isn't that amazing? We have been bypassing what we call the spiritual bypass, basically has two meanings. And I want to just emphasize the meaning of we have been bypassing our spirit. And now the invitation is to incorporate that as well. Even while we are working on detangling, softening, letting go of the matrix, of the emotional attachments, we do need to also be present with spirit so we don't bypass it. And you may want to revisit the video I did a few days ago where I invite you to look in to the field of oneness, heaven, by closing your eyes and just looking into it. And then you realize it's everywhere. It's just that we keep looking over here, right? So we've been bypassing our spirit for so long. And, it almost makes me sad to say that, but we have. And there's also the invitation to choose differently now. And so not bypassing this so we can be with spirit, although not fully merged and integrated, we can do both. And I know I've talked about that before, but somehow this whole spiritual bypassing has a very different meaning or has double meaning now. And I think it's important for us to just notice every time we bypass spirit and look for solutions out there, instead of doing what we can to unhook our attachments to finding solutions out there, let's start practicing more and more to be present in and as spirit. And notice that, just notice the tendency to leave spirit, to bypass spirit, and look for it out there. So that was a piece I really wanted to add to my last video, and just see, is it possible for you to maybe straddle both as long as it's needed until you can fully let go, and then don't need to straddle, you can start surfing your own flow, your own wave, your own spiritual expression, fully and embodied, because that's, of course, where we want to be with it, a fully embodied spirit expressing itself as us in this dimension. All right, my friends, please let me know if you resonate with this. I would love to hear in the comments. And again, reach out if you need support in that. And also, if you would like to join me next week for our next online gathering, where we can really dive deeper into this. And it's really lovely when there is a smaller group. It's usually a very small group, very intimate and deep, to share this with others, because it's just so enriching when we can share it in a place where it's safe, where we're being received, and then hearing from others. And that all kind of embellishes our own experience, and it helps us deepen into our own, and have it reflected back, learn to trust it more, have it confirmed. It's all very beautiful. So you're very welcome to join in that, and the links is also down in the description. Have a great day.